What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so really Shazam has finally come back in DC Comics. And I know a lot of people are just like, oh my God, thank God. Because it's one of those presences that was hugely missed. Like, you can't launch DC Rebirth, some 2 years ago, whenever it was it launched, and then not have Shazam and then just kind of leave it that way. I mean, he was non-existent. There was no indication he was there outside of an appearance from Hellblazer Rebirth. That was it. And so the question everybody's been asking here is, where has Billy Batson been? And what has Billy Batson been doing? Now, a little bit of backstory here. This is actually kind of important. And the reason why is because Geoff Johns just sort of picks up. And it works for what it is, but it does require a little bit of explanation. So, when DC rebooted back in 2011 with New 52, Shazam did not receive a solo series. Instead, he was a backup feature in the Justice League. And this is a lot of this because he hadn't really been able to hold a solo book for some time. But it was also a way to kind of keep people, to introduce people to his character in what was considered to be one of the best-selling books that DC had at the time. It was covered between Justice League issues 9 and 21 as backup features, but it wasn't consistent, right? You would go 9, 10, 11, 12, and then there would be nothing for 13 or 14. And then you would go into 15, and there'd be nothing for 16 or 17, and then you go into, 18, 19, 20, 21. And what the New 52 Shazam book did is it laid the groundwork for Dr. Sivana, who was probably, I would consider to be the arch nemesis of Billy Batson, even if Black Adam's more popular. And then it basically said, okay, there's Billy Batson. It laid his character out. There was the what would become the Shazam family. And then you had kind of the origin of how he got his powers. And then you had him fight Black Adam, and then it was done. And that was it. And that's all you really had. So it was really more like a teaser than anything else. It was really like a story arc, like a singular story arc spread over the course of, what amounted to 10 or really about 12 or 13 parts, and then that was it. And so what this does is immediately jump into it. And so this kind of picks up with the Captain Marvel family, the Shazam family already existing. Now, the funny thing about this is that when it comes to Shazam, one of the big things that people didn't like about Billy's character when the New 52 first launched is that he was dark and cynical. He was just a mean little kid. And the whole idea behind this in terms of how Geoff Johns had written him is that he was a kid who had been bounced from foster home to foster home. And so he had a very, very, very hard life. When he finally was placed in the Vasquez home, that's when he ran into Freddie Freeman and Mary and all those characters who would go on to become the Shazam family. But at the time, he didn't mesh well with them. It wasn't until he was taken before the Wizard Shazam, given his powers, and then sent back to Earth that he began to gain a new understanding for the significance of family. With them being his supporting characters, especially going into the fight of Black Adam, that's when they all began to grow closer. And it wasn't until Justice League number 21 and the final part of the story that Billy realized he needed allies, and then he bestowed a portion of his power onto the rest of the adopted kids, and they became the Shazam family. And so what this does is pick up a year after that, or 9 months after that, but it might as well be a year because of the amount of time that passed, but it picks up after that point in time. So again, it's a little murky in terms of when this takes place chronologically. It says it takes place today, but what that basically argues, what it basically says is everything between the time that Shazam first, gained his powers and the time that the Shazam family was born up till now has only been a year in DC Comics. Take it for what it's worth, you can kind of run with it if you want to, but the fact remains that we basically end up picking up in the Museum of American Revolution. And this is kind of cool because when Billy became a superhero, then he became the Billy Batson that fans had known and recognized from back in the 90s and even before then when they used to read his character. And so when you get in here, they're kind of goofing off. Okay, it looks like they're having the most fun. It looks fun. It's kind of funny here because Freddie Freeman was always kind of the cut up of the group. Well, he was always a kid who was just kind of goofy and messing around, the devil may care kind of attitude. Whereas Billy was more of the middle ground. He's the Mario of the group, right? The balanced character, even if Luigi can jump higher in Mario 2, which despite what Video Game Donkey says, is not the greatest game of all time, not even close. But the fact remains here that in this instance, he's just kind of the character that cuts up and has a good time. And so when this whole thing goes on, these guys basically break into the museum in order to rob these old artifacts and then presumably sell them on the black market or something like that. It's probably the worst decision that a person could have made because they basically run into a place that currently contains a whole bunch of teenagers who shout the word Shazam and basically become Superman. And so they're fighting an army of Supermen, and it was a terrible decision. They were not prepared. That's basically what happens with these guys. Billy Batson's the first one to call it. He pops up and bam, they're all there. They start cleaning house. I mean, that's really the way it is. They literally start cleaning house. Now, this is designed to kind of showcase how they function together. That's the nature of this thing. For those of you guys who are new to comic books, it's one of the things that writers will hit on when they're bringing characters back. When they're introducing characters for the first time, like new X-Men, or when they're when they're coming through and they're saying, okay, here's a new roster of X-Men, then you'll get a series of story arcs that showcase their individual personalities. personalities, and then how they mesh as a team, and how those individual personalities conflict, and that'll take 18 issues or something along those lines to flesh out, 3 story arcs. But with something like this, you're basically bringing the Shazam family back, and so it kind of picks up as if you never left off, and it works because what this does is it basically gives the old Shazam fans kind of just like, hey guys, so we're continuing on with business as usual, and they don't feel like they really missed out on anything. But for the new fans, they get an idea of what the Shazam family's about, while at the same time wanting to go back and see older things. It makes them nostalgic for an age of comics they hadn't read, and so it's pretty cool. It is a pretty cool way to make it work. Of course, this whole skirmish is over quick, fast, and in a hurry. And here's the funny thing: they can't think up a name for themselves. They can't think up a name for their group, and it's kind of funny because I'll be honest, man, like you gotta have a cool name. You cannot become a superhero team and then call yourself anything, right? You can't be like, we're the people who do things. Like you can't call yourself that. But you have to have like a cool name. Honestly, I don't know. Okay, here's a question for you guys. If you guys had to think up a name for the Shazam family that's not called the Shazam family, what would you call them? Like what would the name be? Like I'm kind of curious, like Thundercats. Oh, like I don't know what I would call them. I think it'd be kind of cool. Anyway, so they're just kind of like goofing off, trying to figure out what their name's going to be. The cops are like, let's just chalk it up to Superman, and then they basically end up leaving. And so again, like from there, they transition back home. Now again, not a whole lot is happening here in terms of like fast-paced action, razzle-dazzle. None of that stuff's really happening. It's kind of getting us reacquainted with the characters, getting us reacquainted with the team. Remember, this is issue number 1, so it's not really designed to have a whole lot of things happening. And one of the things that for those of you guys who are new, one of the things that existing comic book fans will tell you is that when it comes to Jeff Johns, it's always a slow burn. Jeff Johns will never like have this great big huge grandiose event that'll happen over the span of like 6 issues. It'll take like 12 or 18 or like 24 or sometimes even 50 some odd issues for the event to reach its conclusion and to have this huge finality and climax. He's very Jonathan Hickman in that regard. Nonetheless, with them getting back home, it's very much just like, kids meshing together and having a good time. And that's kind of the cool thing, is this is starkly different from how it was when Billy first showed up. And that's the great thing about this is, again, for older fans, they're just kind of continuing on. For new fans, it's something new. But for older fans, it's kind of a reward. It's a payoff for due diligence. It's a payoff for sticking around, saying, yes, I read the New 52 run in the back, in the pages of Justice League, and yes, I followed the later Justice League stories where Shazam was part of the team, and during Darkseid War and all that kind of stuff, and so on and so forth. After Trinity War, and Forever Evil and whatnot. Yes, I follow all that kind of stuff, but like I've been a fan ever since, and like yes, we're picking back up again, and yes, I remember all this. It's like a little bit of nostalgia for a series of stories they haven't read in over 3 years. And so when you jump into this whole thing, they're just sort of, like, hey, let's go do stuff. There's some stuff I want to show you guys. So it's like they all race from the table. The parents are like, where are you guys going? And they're like, we all got to do homework, which is no answer any kid ever gave any parent ever. And so like right off the bat, they know that something's wrong because like no kid wants to do homework. But nonetheless, once they actually get into the Rock of Eternity, this is kind of an important thing here. What they've done is they've kind of turned the Rock of Eternity into their base of operations / trophy room. Now they call themselves the actual Shazam family, and that's really kind of what they are at the moment. But this is a little more important than it seems to be. And the reason why is because they're taking these small moments to celebrate things with each other. They're taking these small moments to talk about things that they've done and sort of celebrating the history of their group as a whole. Because with them all having these sort of superhero powers, all of which were bestowed by Billy, it's unified them in a way that they really didn't think was possible when they first met. They have a common theme here. They fight as a superhero team. They've experienced loss. These are the things that are important in terms of how they look at the world. Not only that, one thing to also bear in mind is the Rock of Eternity is empty now, and it has been for some time. The wizard Shazam, or really the wizard Mammergan, who gave Billy Batson his powers, he died almost immediately after that happened. And so Billy was just kind of left to his own devices with no real guidance, no real mentorship. That's really what you saw his character grow when it came to the Justice League comics, because you look to Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, the trinity of superheroes, and even others as major influences in how he should act and function. It was very reminiscent of the old school Justice League Unlimited cartoon when Shazam showed up for the first time and then fought Superman. And then was basically at the end was like, you guys aren't heroes. You guys are people masquerading as heroes, but you're not heroes. You've forgotten what it means to be a hero, and then walks away, which was awesome. Can we all just agree the fight between Shazam and Superman in Justice League Unlimited was beast? I'm gonna watch that as soon as I get done with it. Dude, he thrashed Superman. I'm sorry if I'm so excited, people. But what also happens here is Eugene has actually kind of been mapping through the Rock of Eternity. He's been going through and saying, okay, look, there's really nobody here anymore, but there's all this information that's here. There's all these things that are here, these old rooms that are impossible to access, or, these hallways that go nowhere, different things like that. So we're gonna map the whole place and we're gonna figure out what's going on. Somewhere along the line, there was a wall as part of the Rock of Eternity, and it's gone now. And it leads down to this place that they call the station. Now, where the station, what it leads to, we don't know. We don't know if it leads to like alternate alternate realities, other dimensions? We're not sure, but it does allow for Jeff Johns to kind of set the stage of exploration for the Shazam family as they go through and start seeing where these different trains go to. But it is kind of a cool thing because what we end up being told is that they basically travel to a place called the Magic Lands, and that's when we start to get this explanation here. The Magic Lands, as they're explained here, seem to basically be places where magic reigns supreme in some form or fashion, and that's kind of important here. And the reason why is because if you go and you look at the number of places that seem to exist here in the Magic Lands, there's 7 of them. And the reason why that matters is because originally, when New 52 first launched and we got the history of the Rock of Eternity and so on, there were 7 wizards and sorceresses who governed magic, who basically existed to protect magic. Somewhere along the line, Black Adam went crazy and killed all but the wizard that gave Billy his powers, but they seem to have probably operated out of these places or hailed from these places. And so it's Billy discovering his own lineage in a lot of different ways. Now, this is all stuff that would have been taught to him had the wizard remained alive, but he's discovering all these things. And so by discovering all these things, what this does is it gives him his own personal history. Now, from there, we switch back over to the family of the Vasquezes. Now, of course, there's a couple things going on here. You got Freddie Freeman, who's just kind of like, hey, so like, let's pull these levers and find out where these trains go, which is exactly what I would do. Oh, dude, I would definitely do that. It'd be like, hey, man, so like, we probably shouldn't pull these levers. It's like, well, I mean, how else are we going to know where they go? I would be reckless. I'd be like, let's go on the adventure. But once they yank it, literally like it seems to activate everything. And when that happens, we end up having a knock on the door of Billy Batson's house. The Vasquez answer, and it's basically Billy Batson's father, who says he's here to see his son. Now, one of the things you guys will notice is that the father of Billy Batson looks exactly like Billy when he turns into Shazam. And the reason for that was established back during the Power of Shazam stories by Jerry Ordway. And one of the things that you learn is that Billy Batson, when he turns into Shazam, he actually turns into what he imagined his father to look like. And that's exactly how he looks. So it's kind of tragic and it's kind of sad, but it is cool. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.